What if I told you there was a land so fierce and untamed that it brought the mightiest empire in history to its knees? Welcome to Caledonia, the northern part of Britain we now call Scotland. Here, the Romans who conquered and subjugated kingdoms from Gaul to Egypt faced unexpected resistance like no other. As they marched into this rugged terrain, they believed they would easily crush the so-called savages who inhabited the misty mountains and dense forests. But they underestimated a people who fought not just with weapons, but with the very land itself. In this video, we uncover the gripping tale of how the Picts thwarted Rome's relentless expansion, using cunning guerrilla tactics, the element of surprise, and an unwavering spirit of independence. Join us as we explore the land that Rome could never conquer, where the shadows among the hills hid a fierce resistance that would ultimately change the course of history. At the height of its power, Rome seemed invincible. Its legions crossed continents like red-hot blades, crushing kingdoms, subjugating cultures, and absorbing everything in their path. Every decade, a new name appeared on the maps of the Senate as a Roman province. Gaul fell, Egypt was annexed, Judea surrendered, and Dio went down in history. Everything fit into the expansionist logic of an empire that knew no borders, or almost. But in northern Britain, there was an exception, a mountainous territory shrouded in mist, where the forests seemed to watch silently and the winds cut like blades. This land was Caledonia, what we now know as Scotland. What was it about this place that managed to stop the greatest empire of antiquity? From its beginnings, Rome never saw war solely as a defensive necessity. For the Romans, waging war was a legitimate strategy to assert power, project prestige, and expand civilization. To conquer meant more than to dominate lands. It meant imposing order on a world perceived as chaotic. Each new province was celebrated as a moral victory, as if the universe itself were surrendering to Roman reason. During the Republic, this logic was already in place, but it intensified during the Empire. Under Julius Caesar, Gaul was crushed. Under Octavian, Egypt was absorbed and Hispania was consolidated. Even the Parthians, one of Rome's historical enemies, were contained within well-defined borders. In the west, the island of Britannia also seemed destined to be swallowed up by the imperial machine. In the year 43 AD, Emperor Claudius launched a bold campaign in Britain, armed not only with military might but also with the support of local elites. With skillful diplomacy and overwhelming force, the Romans took the southern part of the island with surprising speed. Whole tribes were co-opted, local leaders were granted citizenship and official positions. Within a few decades, southern Britain boasted amphitheaters, paved roads and public baths, seemingly another inevitable success for Rome, and then their eyes turned northward. Caledonia was perceived as just another stage, a technical challenge rather than a strategic obstacle. The peoples living there were deemed primitive, tribal, without writing, large-scale agriculture, or any centralized political organization. Rome viewed them as savages who had not yet grasped the benefits of conquest. Gaius Julius Agricola, governor of Britain and father-in-law of the historian Tacitus, was one of the first to lead campaigns to the north. Tacitus's biography of Agricola vividly illustrates the Roman mentality. The Caledonians, described as fierce but inevitably surmountable, was seen through a lens of arrogance that ultimately concealed a fatal blindness. Rome knew how to best enemy armies and negotiate with local elites. It knew how to subdue cities and cut off supplies. Yet it found itself perplexed when faced with adversaries who had no king, no capital, and wanted absolutely nothing from Rome. The moment the legions crossed into Caledonia, everything began to go wrong. The terrain was steep and unwelcoming, shaped to destroy any force that dared traverse it. Characterized by mountainous plains divided by narrow valleys and treacherous swamps, the landscape was almost a fortress in itself. The sun rarely lit the ground as thick forests loomed, full of traps for the unwary. The Great Caledonian Forest was impenetrable and dark, with ancient trees and ferns concealing any number of dangers. It was a land of bogs that swallowed the unwary feet, horses, and entire carts alike would disappear into the muck. As thick fogs rolled in unexpectedly, visibility would drop dramatically, leaving the legionaries unsure if the road ahead was a path to victory or a plunge into destruction. In camp, the relentless moisture was a hidden enemy, rotting provisions and corroding armor. Soldiers suffered from dysentery, lung infections, and fevers, not from the blades of the enemy, but from the harsh environment of northern Britannia. Roman strategies, developed over centuries, depended on predictability, calculated march, symmetrical camps, and constant supply lines. The Roman army was a well-oiled machine, but machines break down when the terrain refuses to cooperate. In Caledonia, no road remained intact for long. Convoys could not advance without risk. Every tree and hill was a potential threat. Visibility was so poor that scouts would lose their way, and entire patrols could vanish into thin air. Archaeological and climatological studies have confirmed that the environment was harsher for the Romans than it is even today. Long winters, short summers, and constant rain made their campaign less about conquering enemies and more about surviving the land itself. The Romans were well trained to handle human armies, but in Caledonia, the greatest enemy was not just the land beneath their feet, it was the very ghosts of those who inhabited it. The Picts, as the Romans named them, meaning the painted ones, were not a unified entity but various tribes and clans scattered across mountains, valleys, and forests, each with its own culture and methods of survival. The absence of a centralized government, which Rome considered a sign of weakness, instead became one of the Picts' greatest assets. There was no single point to conquer. Every tribe could be likened to heads of the same snake, and cutting one off did not prevent the others from continuing to bite. They inhabited circular stone structures called brocks in isolated villages, often positioned in high places that provided a strategic view of the surrounding landscape. They became experts in knowing where to tread, escape routes, and ambush points. The most remarkable aspect of their resistance was ideological. The Picts didn't merely fight to defend their land. They resisted because they rejected Roman civilization in all its forms. They did not seek citizenship, nor did they want roads built upon their soil. They had no desire to wear Roman clothing or speak Latin. Their home was their own, and they treated any invader who crossed their hills with hostility. Tacitus captures the spirit of the Caledonian tribes, emphasizing that they were more prepared for war than for submission. Their will to resist was not merely a matter of pride, but a crucial component of their survival. The more Rome escalated its attacks, the more the Pictish tribes fragmented, scattered, and resisted. Even as Rome built infrastructure, the Picts actively sought to destroy it. This resistance proved difficult for Rome to control through conventional military victories because the struggle was not fought from castles or senates. It sprung from the very earth, the forests, and an indomitable refusal to yield. Rome relied on predictable tactics, organized formations, clear orders, and constant advances, but the Picts did not adhere to these rules of engagement. They did not engage in traditional warfare. Rather, they chose to fight through ambush, surprises, and guerrilla tactics. The legions, outfitted with heavy armor and equipment, marched under the weight of standard military formations. In stark contrast, the Picts moved lightly, carrying minimal gear, with speed and agility as their weapons. They attacked swiftly, then retreated before any Roman counterattack could even materialize. Tacitus recounts the vividness of their tactics during the famed Battle of Mount Gropius. Although Agricola claimed to have defeated thousands, the actual outcome proved insignificant. The Picts did not have a central structure to occupy or control, allowing them to simply withdraw and reappear at another location. It was like fighting smoke. Each Pictish attack aimed to destabilize Roman routine, cutting off supply routes, interrupting messengers, spreading fear, and forcing Romans to sleep with their hands on weapons. When a legion finally reacted, the enemy had already vanished as subtly as their own shadows. It was a war of attrition that didn't necessitate annihilating entire armies. Rather, it drained morale and resolve. Rome recognized the importance of troop morale. Soldiers in fear without proper rest or nourishment were less effective. A commander under pressure from invisible enemies would make mistakes. This constant state of anxiety transformed Roman soldiers into shadows of their former selves, engaging in a daily struggle merely to survive. The Picts were willing to wait. They were in no hurry. They had no territories to defend. They simply possessed the principle of resistance. When brute force proved ineffective, Rome resorted to terror, the age-old strategy of destroying crops, blocking resources, taking hostages, and razing entire villages. This approach had worked in Gaul, Judea, and Germania. Entire peoples capitulated before the systematic devastation of the legions. But in Caledonia, that logic faltered. The Picts did not live in walled cities and did not rely on centralized agriculture. Their communities were mobile and adaptable, capable of disappearing before the Romans could encircle them. They utilized their terrain to evade confrontation, moving swiftly through nature's nooks and crannies. As Roman generals fortified strategic areas and erected imposing forts, none proved effective. Tutel, for example, was a massive initiative intended to house thousands of soldiers, but archaeological evidence shows that many were abandoned before their construction was even completed. Despite diligent efforts to claim dominion over Caledonia, the Romans never established fortified villages or permanent roads. Their advances left only ephemeral footprints, easily washed away by the rain. What Rome called peace was merely a fragile truce, disrupted incessantly by further ambush. Scholars such as Peter Salway and Shepard Freer highlight that the Roman presence north of Hadrian's Wall was less defining conquest and more a fleeting occupancy subject to constant resistance from foes who would not yield. Gradually, Rome began to question the worth of its ventures in Caledonia. Behind every campaign lay strategic calculations. It was insufficient to dominate. The province must provide tangible benefits such as taxes, minerals, or slaves. Yet Caledonia proved an enigma that offered little reward. Any mineral wealth hidden within was virtually unreachable due to an inhospitable climate and armed resistance. Roman records demonstrated the challenge of constructing supply routes through Caledonia as well. Uphill battles were made fraught with logistical hurdles. The famous Roman roads they prided themselves upon simply could not withstand the demands of terrain and weather. Any roads built were elongated, vulnerable to ambush, and astronomically costly to maintain. The Roman military machine, which thrived in more amenable territories, found itself trapped in an unforgiving landscape, strained by the relentless raids of the Pict tribes. With reinforcements sent frequently to replace losses, the Romans suffered more than just physical setbacks. As the Romans tried to maintain stability, their presence only drained resources, achieving little more than a strained supply line. Faced with dwindling returns, Rome began recalibrating its grand strategy, realizing that the conquests it sought in Caledonia were simply not sustainable. Uncertainty loomed over whether they could justify the continuing cost of trying to dominate a land that resisted the very concept of dominance. And so, what once seemed an inevitable conquest instead became a symbol, a testament to the enduring human spirit, the relentless pursuit of independence. While Rome may have spent its might on the rest of the world, it only found its match in the misty, rugged hills of Caledonia, where people chose to live free rather than be chained by an empire's iron grip.